Today's first speaker is one of the pioneers in the field of integrated assessment modeling of global change. His research, which spans over 4 decades, focuses on interactions between global and regional energy, technology, economy, land, water, atmosphere, and climate systems and global change. He's also served as lead author on every major assessment from the IPCC. The pioneering question is the economist Jae Edmonds, the College Park Professor of Public Policy at the University of Maryland. And since yesterday, also proud grandfather, so congratulations. For anyone who has taken part in this conference before, he should be well known, both as an inspiring speaker and a natural part of the expert panel on the first row. I'm going to get back to them later. Dr. Edmonds, he is now ready to share some of his knowledge with us. And the question is, how big is the gap now between current policy and the concrete actions that we need to implement if we are serious about keeping the average global warming below 2 degrees? So please welcome Jae Edmonds to the podium. Good morning, Jae.
Thank you.
Take it away.
So thanks to everyone for coming this morning. Particular thanks to the organizers that have enabled me to come to this meeting, not for the first time, but this is actually, I think, about the 10th time that I have been here in Trondheim for a meeting. And in fact, at the beginning of this series of meetings, that goes back at least a decade, we were talking about what were the implications of Paris? What were they going to be like? And so after a decade of the Paris Agreement in 2015, it's time to take a look at how we are doing. And as you all know, the Paris Agreement was established to replace the Kyoto Protocol, which was at the time the principal mechanism by which governments of the world were organizing to address climate change and reduce emissions. So the Paris Agreement set as its goal, and goal setting is a relatively easy task, hold the increase of global average surface temperature to well below 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels, and to pursue best efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. In 2015, that looked like a pretty doable task. It wasn't going to be easy. It was going to be ambitious, but it was not going to be impossible. You could see your way there. The chief mechanism by which countries agreed to achieve this long-term goal, which focused on the end of the century, that is, holding the increase in average surface temperature of the planet to well below 2 degrees, was the nationally determined contributions. And so rather than the strategy of Kyoto, which was a top-down strategy in which everyone was given a limit on their emissions, and it was a cap-and-trade mechanism, so you could cap and trade. It only covered a certain number of countries, not the entire planet. The Paris Agreement was comprehensive. It was global. It gave everyone the task of implementing the goal of the agreement. And so rather than being top-down, it was bottom-up. And each country was set the task of putting forward what they could do to achieve the goal. And so if we look at the slide that Oscar put up, you can see that as of today, if you look at current policies and measures, they're certainly, and then contrast that to well below 2 degrees and 1.5 degrees, though the stable emissions of greenhouse gases, principally carbon dioxide, is just not going to be adequate. In fact, ultimately, you have to have CO2 emissions drop to zero. And so we're not any place near getting to zero. The governments of the world, the good news is that we had 185 countries offer up NDCs, nationally determined contributions. The bad news is that the sum of all of those, both conditional and unconditional contributions, is highly inadequate to meeting the long-term Paris goals. There's a dramatic need for increased ambition, and yet so far we are now in the 10th year, and it is time for NDCs 3.0, which were due early this year. And so far, of those 185 countries, we have only had 18 countries offer up new NDC submissions for the year 2035, one of which looks to be consistent with 1.5, 17 others, and the rest of the world has yet to respond. Now, we have until November 10th, when the COP30 starts, to see how many more countries will contribute, but it doesn't look particularly good at this moment. Perhaps I will try to end on a somewhat more positive note and say that much of the progress that we have made to date has been the result of improvements in technologies, improvements in batteries, improvements in renewable energy, wind and solar, improvements across a broad spectrum of technologies that have driven out technologies that are emitting. And so rather than being on this ever-increasing emissions path, which is where we were when we began this process, we have at least stabilized emissions. And so the task is for places like NTNU, the professors and students, to keep up the effort to meet the challenge to develop those technologies which will continue driving out the high emissions sources and to help us get on the right path and make it easier for those remaining countries to come up with NDCs that are consistent with the long-term Paris goals.